Brendan, John, lovely to meet you. Thanks for chatting to us today.
Lovely to see you.
First question, have you any good hangover tips?
Keep drinking is usually a good one.
Or don't start?
My wife now gives me this fizzy orange thing that you put in water, which you take just as you go into bed, which helps.
You trust your wife?
It's got vitamins. She says it's...
Yeah, you trust your wife.
That's what she says it is. Who knows?
Congratulations on the film. Are you getting annoyed yet at people constantly calling it Calvary instead of Calvary?
I've got a few great ones.
It started off that way and it's disappeared for a while. I'm sure it's going to come back again.
I've got Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
You could also have
Canadian film. I got Carvery.
I was just going to say.
I want to see Carvey. That's the third film in the trilogy, is it?
Carvery, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it with extra gravy.
I was thinking movie.
You should have just gone for Father Dead. That would have been
That
good.
was Kim Newman in Empire magazine has just used that.
Oh, has he?
Yeah. It's in the 5-star review. He calls
good.
it Father Dead. So that's
I didn't steal that. I swear to God. So can you tell us a little bit how the story came about? Because I read that while you were filming The Guard, that it was started to form some sort of I can't even talk today. Idea.
It was a lock-in in a pub in Spiddle in Galway. Don was with us. He had a few pints and he had a Chinese.
And
by the end of the night, we were just saying, well, what, because we got on so well. I was like, oh, what should we do next? And I said, I bet they're making loads of films about bad priests, with all the scandals. We should do one about a good priest. And
see, he has robbed all that idea now. What happened was, we were talking about how difficult it must be for a good man in the present situation to maintain his faith. And he then says, if I write it, will you do it? But he had said that you'd been thinking about doing a good priest for a good while anyway. It's kind of was one of those, but it was like, and it was also the first time we got a chance to have a few pints with making The Guard. It's where we were doing nothing else. But it was like, we had finished the Connemara section, we were going to go up to Wicklow. And we were just talking about the difficulty of maintaining kind of self-belief even apart from anything else. Just if you were, like, there had been a guy accused of being a paedophile, a priest who wasn't, he had just been cleared. And that was part of the discussion as well.
Right,
that there was imagine, like, of all things to be accused of, and it's one of my favourite scenes in the movie actually, is just talking to the girl, where he's accused, he's just talking to a girl, and it's like something that, it's the small things really that crush you in the end, you know what I mean? Like, I was thinking about it even today because it's been a while now as we've seen it screened and all the rest of it. But like the two scenes that really break him up mostly, that actually tip him over are the dog and just not being able to have a conversation with a child on the road. It's like, so that's the German anyway. We were chatting for in this great pub in Galway, and Don with his Chinese that nobody knew where he got it from.
But what happened was there wasn't loads of movies made about bad priests. There hasn't been any. I think it's sort of like Vietnam, where Vietnam, the war had to be over for about 10 years before anyone made a good film about it. As if there has to be a bit of a brooding period and a bit of an aftermath before people examine it. Also, it's such a sort of distressing, depressing subject that I think, our approach is there is a lot of black comedy in the movie, so it's not taking that kind of boring, sort of banal approach to the subject. You're actually hitting it as a sort of a black comedy and as a thriller,
Yeah, and mostly it's a bunch of questions that are being thrown at people as well. Like, I think the fact is that by virtue of the fact that he is a good man, people figure they can throw everything at him outwardly. Whereas if he was a different individual, they wouldn't actually accuse him of this stuff because it might be true.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. So they know that he's not. They actually know he's not corrupted in that way. So they feel they can fling everything that they have at him, all their rage at all the other stuff. So in a funny way, like those things that you're talking about that would be made in a film about a bad priest actually are aired by the people rather than by himself. Rather than his story.
The priest is good. Everyone else is bad. Is a blanket way of approaching the story, and then of course you find nuances all the way through.
Yeah, you've answered about 90 of my questions there, so that's brilliant in that one answer. We'll just come back to the comedy and the darkness here, because are you looking forward to getting the Irish audience reaction or any audience reaction? Because there's so many familiar comedic faces up there, and they're playing these dark characters, these horrible people.
Well, obviously, it's played really well in Sundance and Berlin, but that's where they're really unfamiliar with a lot of the cast, to be honest. So it's probably going to get probably going to get a different reaction to certain scenes. I mean, obviously, Dave McSavage playing the Bishop is obviously going to get a different reaction than it would in Sundance or Berlin. It'll be interesting. I mean, because maybe a lot of people are expecting The Guard 2, and they're not going to get it. Or they're going to get it slightly. There's a similar sort of feel to it, but it goes to a much darker place by the end,
Well, I think there's a kind of a lightness of touch, particularly at, for a while where there is the release of a laugh quite often, and then it becomes progressively a little bit more difficult to get that because of where it heads. But I have to say, for myself, the Irish reaction is going to be interesting, but I don't think that this is a particularly quintessentially Irish film as such, because I think the questions are bigger. It's about trying to maintain the notion of goodness. It's not really about just Catholicism or just Irish people's disillusionment. Like, this goes up globally, really, where people are really finding it difficult now to believe in leaders of any sort. And to believe, actually, are we a good species or are we rotten to the core? Because people are all retreating into their own individual despair, I think. So, I'd much prefer if it was taken, it's obvious an Irish film, it's set in an Irish context. I hope it's not just seen as a kind of a state of the nation thing. It's not just that.
It's not intended to be like an examination of the Irish character or anything. To me, it's like you could set the film in a small town in Spain or a small town in Italy or a small town in Latin America. Anywhere that has dealt with these sorts of scandals or that's in a recession, which is virtually everywhere now,
Yeah, or you could put it in. You got to put it in somewhere where there's a shaman who and the people are beginning to get the notions of the modern thing. It's going to be it's always going to be about the same questions about, this man's going around absorbing other people's pain. That's what he's doing, and people are, because he's not actually Christ or somebody, or he's not actually God. They're blaming him for it. You know what I mean? They're blaming him for everything else. They want him to absorb it, and they want him to prove them wrong, that there is something to believe in, basically. So I think it's kind of way beyond. For me, I'd love Irish people to see it that way, in a way, and just to understand that this is what filmmaking in this country can be, not just about Ireland.
It should have a mythic aspect to it.
Yeah.
And that's why, we use those locations, so it feels like a really big film, not like a small parochial film.
I wanted to ask you one final question, but I think
go ahead. Go on, you're all right.
One very quick one. Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses? That's it. One duck-sized horse.
I'd prefer to have a duck-sized arse.
A duck-sized arse.
Yeah.
I think I messed up that question. So I've just been consistently shit the whole way through. Well, listen,
all the way through.
But
at least you're being consistent.
Yeah, I'm away to keep drinking again. So listen, I'll chat to you later. It's lovely to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks a million.
All right.
Good luck.